I guess it's always the first day of the rest of our lives, but we get to decide the rest of my life. What do I want that to look like? And I want to give a few thoughts about that because here's what we find. If we are continuing to be above the ground breathing, over time, days become weeks, become months, become years, becomes decades, and decades ultimately add up, I don't know, eight or nine of them on average, seven, eight or nine of them on average, depending on a lot of things. That ends up to be a life. Now, here's what we know about lives. Very, very, very few are straight lines. I mean, you've got a few of them, you see every now and then somebody as a tiny tot knew what they wanted to be and they're going to have it grow up and they take off and it's a straight path. Most of us, however, we have a new rest of our lives that happens multiple times in a lifetime. I think the average is something like six or seven different major, like even if not job change, direction change, career changes that people make. I mean, I can't kind of even imagine how does an 18-year-old know what they're going to be doing at 40 anyway? It's kind of it's scary. I mean, unless you're going to do something that takes real prep, like your pre-med or pre-law or something like that. But even then, you go into those fields and that might take you in a lot of different directions. So I want you to think of wherever you are now, we're talking about a long line of the rest of your life. Okay. Well, the rest of your life, let's pick a segment. Let's say, I don't care what you pick. Let's say this year, next 2 years, next 5 years, next decade. What do you want that to look like? See, a lot of people, what happens is they get started, and here's what happens. And I don't mean this in any kind of derogatory way, I mean it in a descriptive way, because there really are when we get into people's heads, there really are different kinds of thinking in how people live lives. Okay. But there are some people that are by and large, they are led into their life. They're led into their life. Now, here's what I mean by that you grow up, maybe you're in a family or you're in a culture or a subculture or something that this is kind of the way that subculture does it. And you just sort of follow the way that it's done. Just follow the way that it's done. Nothing wrong with that, but it is a particular way to live life. Let me give you another example of that particular way. Sometimes we have internal patterns that we are led by as well, that can be at odds with maybe what's in our heart, what we want to do. But our patterns, and sometimes those patterns can be out of brokenness, that those patterns influence what we do with our lives. Sometimes, well, I'll give you an example of that pattern. I don't know if you've ever heard me tell the story. I've got a longer version of this that really is quite interesting. If you are interested, you know what? I'm going to tell you the long version. But I'm going to give you an example of how God sometimes steps into our patterns. Okay, but I'll give you an example of being limited by a pattern as well. Um, when I was, I think it was either the seventh or eighth grade, I had a very, 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 very horrible experience um, with public speaking, and won't go into all of it. It's too boring. Just take the bottom line. I left that experience saying I will never, ever, ever stand up in front of a group and talk again, ever. I will not do it, and I lived by that. It was very, very traumatic what happened. I went through high school, never stood up in front of a class, wouldn't talk. Went through college, same thing. In fact, I almost didn't graduate from high school, literally, even though I was an A student. I love school, but I refused to give my oral book report as a senior in high school. And the teacher said, "Well, you can't graduate unless you give the oral book report." I said, "Plunk me." And I was already going to college. I had been recruited to play golf at a really good golf school. And I said, screw it, I'm not going. I will not do that. I literally couldn't do it. It wasn't a will. I mean, I couldn't do it. So she let me come in after class and get the book report. My point being, I was limited by some woundedness. Okay. And was kind of following, I was going to do things that didn't require, and the rules out being an attorney. You can't stand up in front of a courtroom. It rules out a bunch of stuff. It's going to require, any kind of public speaking. So anyway, I go through college, I go through graduate school, never do this. Well, I get out of graduate school, I've got to practice, and I'm starting to build models and stuff. And I'm getting invitations to come speak. And I say, I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't do that. I got invitations from professional organizations, from companies, from churches, just stuff. And I'd say, no, I don't do it. I don't do it. And I was just continue. But see, my woundedness was limiting my path. Okay, so here's what happened. One day I am at the gym working out. You can, whatever you believe about this story, you can believe about the story, but I'm gonna tell you what happened. I'm in the gym working out, went to the locker room, I'm walking to the shower. This guy walks up to me on the way to the shower and he says, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "Yeah, why?" I mean, it's kind of weird, I'm walking in the shower naked, right? This other naked. I don't know why he's asking me this. It was strange. And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he literally said this. He said, "Because God just told me to tell you something." And I said, "Well, I'm also a psychologist and I can make those voices go away." Or at least I thought, I might have even said that. But I did think that. I said, "Is this guy crazy?" He said, look, don't think I'm crazy. He said, "I'm a pastor." And he told me the local church. I knew the church. He said, "I'm not crazy, but I'm telling you, God just told me to tell you something and I want to talk to you." So we go next door and sat down and got coffee. And here's what he told me. He said, "God told me that you have been afraid to get up in front of people and speak since you were a kid because of some bad things that happened to you." And he said, he wants you to begin to speak in front of audiences and begin to speak for him. And he's going to open some doors and you have to walk through those. Okay. Here's my point. I love my work, and part of my work is about, expressing content. For example, I would have never done this show ever, ever, ever. I just didn't do this. I mean, there's people listening. I'm not going to talk to people. Okay. But sometimes we're limited and we follow down a path that comes from our own internal woundedness, or what parents want you to do, or what the culture, or what somebody told you, you're only smart enough to do this. Or the second route is to stop and say, I'm not going to listen to the culture, to parents, to what the church told me, to whatever. I want to find out what's in my heart. One of my favorite verses in Proverbs, it says that a person's path comes from their heart, and then God directs their steps. He opens doors and brings opportunities and resources. But it comes from that heart, that desire. Well, once I could be open to that, then I started to really desire. I love the content that I think about. I'd love to communicate that. I'd love to share that with people. All sorts of things begin to happen. But I want you to think about getting on that second path where you don't let any of the limitations of this is just the way we do it in our town. We graduate from high school and we get a job at the local whatever, or we go to this local school, why? Why? This is your path with your fingerprint. What are you going to dream? And then what's the next step? Well, I could never do that. Why? Because you'd have to go to school and get a different degree. Okay, fine. Sign up and take one course. See if you like it. There's a community college around. Go online. You can do this. I just want you to think about the rest of your life. Remember another proverb, that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire accomplished is sweet to the soul. Get in touch with your desires. It doesn't have to be a career change. It doesn't have to be what you do as your day job. It doesn't have to be that at all. I've got a friend who actually owns a big company. And you know what his biggest passion is right now? I mean, he loves his work and loves all that. His beekeeping. He always had a dream. He wanted to work with bees. Now he's got his, he's got a little piece of property, and he's like a beekeeper, like establishing all. He's on fire because he had a dream and he went and did it. Okay, take a minute, sit down with yourself. How long's it been since you sat down and had a cup of coffee with yourself and ask, self, what are you dreaming about there that you're not telling me? Sometimes we block ourselves from the awareness of our dreams because of our fears and limitations. What are you dreaming about? What are you dreaming about? Maybe you can choose to think that's possible because there's no shortage of negative voices telling you you can't do it. But dreams can come to reality if we sit down and begin to ask, what are they? Okay.